name is Jordan Farmer. This is episode 28 of the UnCommon Conversations podcast. And today my guest is going to be Alex Conn, one of my followers who we started talking, we started hitting it off. I realized he knew a whole bunch of stuff and he would make a great podcast guest and a pair or a duo in terms of a good conversation. So, and he's hopping on. And we're going to get after it and give y'all a show. It's going to be good. You guys are going to learn something on this one.
Hey, dude.
And he is here. What's up, Alex?
What's up, man?
How you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing great.
That's good, man. That's good. You got some good facts in store for us today?
I do. Very
so, please give my audience an intro to you and to your political journey up until this point.
Okay, so when I basically was kind of apolitical until I was like probably 14. I became like, I think this kind of comes into this, but I became really non-religious when I was 12. I stopped going to church with my parents, and this ties in. But, and then, when I was 14, I had a crisis of faith, and I just really became an atheist. And I started watching videos by The Atheist Voice, and then eventually by Secular Talk. And Secular Talk is a political commentary, not podcast, but YouTube channel. And he used to have a lot of really atheist videos. But then I listened the fact that he also had political videos, and I was like, I don't really know a lot about politics, let me just watch them. And then my mind was just fucking blown, and then I just got obsessed. And this was like June, July of 2016, so this was during the 2016 election.
Oh wow, okay, that's a hell of a time.
Right after Bernie conceded. So like I was just in there, and I was just hearing at the time, like, kind of the left-wing ideology I had heard was like the wine mom sucking the dick of Hillary Clinton. Like that was the left-wing ideology I was really exposed to, and I knew I didn't want to be a part of that. So like I remember like, just to fuck with people, I think I was like, I said I was like a Romney supporter in like 2012 because all the annoying people liked Obama. But it was always apolitical. But yeah, that's, and then I kind of shifted. I think I've gone left and right on certain issues over those since I was 14. But yeah, so that's my political journey.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Kyle Kalinske, the guy who's the host of Secular Talk, and came across him many eons ago, probably like around 2013 or so. Early in what he was doing, and yeah, it was a little bit of the atheist progressive combo made him an interesting person to listen to. Yeah, and it's really interesting that you came from from the apolitical framework and then got introduced to him. Yeah, because I know how substantive and how informed and historically he can bring up a lot of stuff kind of off the cuff of his head. Kyle is so that would be a great like intro, but also really compelling, like really compelling to the point where it's easy to just adopt the worldview and say I'm done because it's so well formed.
Yeah, and the other thing that really kind of appealed to me is this is not substantive, but it really appealed to me the kind of the profanity of him. And he'll often say to people he disagrees with, like a very common Kyle thing is he'd be like, "Well, I don't think you're that bright." Like he'll often insult the intelligence of like his people who he's against. Am I frozen?
People never do that in politics. Yeah, your video froze for a second. You'll come back though. Yeah, you're back.
Good? Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're back now.
I just had to check my what my charge was.
No worries.
So basically, I kind of came from a very kind of progressive, not progressive, but I came from a very kind of atheist perspective. And then I got into progressivism. And then when I was probably around 15 to 16 to kind of impress.
Real quick, how old are you for the audience? How old are you right now?
I'm 19. I'm 19. I'm about to turn 20 in November.
Okay.
And I'm a freshman in college. So when I was around 15, 16, to impress girls, I became a male feminist.
You're one of those guys. That was your strategy.
That was my strategy, and I started to listen to way more. I was always kind of a fan of the Young Turks, but like I started listening to way more Young Turks videos, and I was like, I should write shit down now. Like maybe like if I talk about the patriarchy, I can get some pussy. But like.
There's some truth to that. There's some truth to that.
There is some truth to that, and yeah, and also when I was like 15, 16, that was when Me Too was a thing. That was like 2017. That was when Me Too, like that's when we found out about Harvey Weinstein.
That's when the pink hats happened and the whole thing.
No, pink hats happened earlier. That happened in the early 2017. That happened after Trump was elected.
Oh, okay. I thought it was that. Was it? Oh, yeah, it was his election. It wasn't his inauguration. Maybe it was both.
It was right after the election because the Women's March happened right after. Like that was the thing, and it stopped because Biden won. But yeah, the Me Too era was like that was the big thing, and like sexual harassment, and we can talk about this because I have many critiques of Me Too, and then I think I've kind of become. Probably age has kind of made me, I wouldn't say I'm a libertarian-y, but I'm probably more libertarian-y than I was when I was like younger. And people like, I think Glenn Greenwald have really kind of shaped my kind of political beliefs now.
That's probably one of the better, maybe the best left-wing journalist sort of perspective you can get out there would be a Glenn Greenwald. The other people, I would like a Tim Pool is more of a moderate than a pure left.
I think thing. My problem with Tim Pool is like literally like I have very big issues with Tim Pool. My main issue with Tim Pool happens that Glenn Greenwald is somebody who critiques both sides. Tim Pool has the Dave Rubin thing where he's like, I'm a leftist, but like I'm really like just doing the conservatives' yard work. Well, like what I like about Glenn Greenwald is he'll go on Tucker Carlson and he'll talk about why Snowden should be pardoned. And I think that that's a very admirable thing to do, to go to an audience that doesn't know about these anti-war sentiments and to honestly teach them about stuff like that. Yeah, so that's my thing, and I have many critiques of the left as well. And
no, I definitely. What's interesting about that critique is it's one that I would kind of accept as a critique of me as well. Now I'm more forthright and conscious about how I do it, but I am very much allied with the right now, as I see like they're the open-minded, willing to have a conversation. Not so quick to judge you for your character side of the political spectrum. I feel like there's more room for fruitful conversation. And I call it the center of gravity of rational discussion. And it shifts left to right. And right now I'd say it's right. So like I adopt I'm critiquing the left because the left needs to get its ego in check. The left has a vision of itself that is, in my opinion, improper. It's not they're trying to represent the working class, not they're trying to advocate for
I don't think they're trying to represent
abortion and women's rights. Like there's those areas where I think they could try to make a sales pitch. But it goes beyond that to say we're the only people that care about poor people. Everyone else hates all minorities. The other side is nothing but racist and white nationalists and so I'm kind of operating in this grander with this grander goal of an ego check on the left, because the right is not like, well, Trump is actually a saint of a human being, and no right-wing politician has ever done anything, whatever, and we're all saints on this side. Right-wingers tend to make it more about
policy and
wisdom and policy, and then like breaking tradition and what they would call stupid policy, which I don't like because there's a lot of very intelligent policy on the left that the right doesn't understand. So it's a bit of a thing where both sides have it, but right now I feel like the left needs to be steered and pulled back in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree with at least some of what you're saying, because I think Tim Pool is one of the better ones on there. I have many critiques of Tim Pool, but he's one of the better ones.
He is in favor of pardoning Snowden.
No, yeah, he is. But like for instance, like Dave Rubin gets on my nerves all the fucking time because his whole thing is like, oh, I have conversations with people, but he won't debate Sam Cedar. He won't debate Kyle Kalinske. He won't debate ContraPoint.
I think so. So I think that is a humility thing for Dave Rubin.
Yeah.
I think he, like, when he's well rehearsed and he's practiced what he's going to say and he's like made his little comedy sketch at the beginning of an event or whatever, he's pretty articulate and he can say sort of summarize things well. But I feel like he is not intellectually on a Kyle Kalinski's level.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of bullying from Kyle's side and a little bit of, I think, appropriate humility. And I've been frustrated by the same thing that Dave Rubin is kind of just even the Freedom Tunes YouTube channel made a joke saying that like it basically was Dave, and then it would show the person he was interviewing, and they would say one thing, then another thing, then another thing, and he'd be like, I can agree with that. And then the next person would say something, oh, and I can agree with that. Yeah. And then the next person, oh, and I can agree with that. And so that's a legit critique, but I think
I agree.
He's trying to be like an everyman, and he kind of is an everyman.
Yeah.
More so than a Joe Rogan. A Joe Rogan, in my opinion, I hold to very high intellectual standards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But my critique of Dave Rubin is I would have no fucking problem with the man if he just didn't do the battle of ideas bullshit. Because his show is not the battle of ideas. It is not. It's a bunch of people that are libertarians, or the only progressives he has on are people like Brett Weinstein, who are progressives, but they criticize the left. But he's not had and I'm fine. Like, I understand, like, he's not on the intellectual level of a Kyle Kalinske, but I would on the level of like where I just don't like the bullshit. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
I definitely agree. I can see that, and there's been many moments where I've been frustrated with him on individual things. I think because I'm a little bit of I'm a fanboy of the intellectual dark web. I have a soft spot for Dave Rubin and for anyone in that kind of a crowd, just because and mostly it centers around Jordan Peterson and Eric Weinstein for me. Eric Weinstein on the economics and the theoretical physics front, but with Jordan Peterson on the sort of, to me, Jordan Peterson's work has integrated the fields of science and religion. Yeah. And the field of science and the domain of religion, I should say. And so I definitely have a soft spot for Dave Rubin. But no, I see where you're coming from. I think he could do a lot better for sure, but it is what it is.
It's so funny because when I was in high school, I wrote an article. Like, that was my first article I ever wrote. When I was in I think the website is basically done. But when I was in high school last year, there was a thing called web journalism, and web journalism was like a class where you could write for this website called The Garnet Mine. And the first article I ever wrote was The Danger of the IDW. And I have my criticism of the IDW, and I can share them. Sam Harris, for one, I wouldn't say I was a fan of, but the man is literally a neocon. Like, Sam Harris is a neocon. Like, I don't think people talk about this as much. Like, I think he's like in favor of torture and stuff like that. And then Jordan Peterson, some of his stuff I enjoy, but again, my main problems go back to, I just wish it was like this shit like wasn't, they weren't, and I actually, with the intellectual dark web, because I'm not pro intellectual dark web. I have my problems with them, but I think that what's interesting about the intellectual dark web to me is how what they are now is what left-wing politics used to be in the 1990s and the 1960s. In terms of this kind of, sorry if I'm just going all over the place.
No, you're good.
This is just how my mind works. But like, for instance, in the 90s, like for instance, like what we used to talk about was, oh shit, right-wingers were talking about how bad Marilyn Manson was. And like 9 Inch Nails and all these places and all these, and the rocker kids were all rebelling against these like people like Jerry Falwell and these people like that. And that was the rebellion. It was like, oh yeah, we're rebelling against, the free speech was the thing. It was the conservatives that were for the free speech, that were against the free speech. You look at the 1960s, for instance, and you got all these folks, like the kids, the people that were the cool ones, the edgy ones, were the liberals, were the leftists, were people like Abby Hoffman, people like Jerry Rubin, and to a lesser point, even though he is kind of a criminal, Bill Ayers. Like, these people that, they had their long hair, they had their kind of profane dialect, and they were the rebellion ones. Like, who wanted to be on, at that time, who wanted to be like a Nixon supporter? Like, who wanted to be a Nixon supporter in 1970 if you were a young person? Yet, you look at now, it's like the left, like at least to like a kind of somebody who has like a rudimentary level of politics, like if you're not necessarily familiar with the specific policies, you look at fucking Pete Buttigieg and you look at the intellectual dark web, and who's cooler? Like, Pete Buttigieg is not fucking cool. He's like this, he's like the kind of gay man that's designed by wine moms.
He's charming, he's not cool. And he's charming not to the masses, he's charming to suburban house moms.
Yeah. He like is like this, yeah. Like he's like his base,
and he's like, ex-intelligent, so not to be trusted.
Yeah,
it's an unfortunate rule, but that will forever be my rule. We saw what happened with Bush Sr. when we had an ex-head of the CIA get in office.
Yeah,
never again. That's about as much of a never again as the other never again. Yeah, it is also extremely important that we also never have again.
Yeah, so my position on, Pete Buttigieg is literally like, his base is the kind of wine mom that watches Glee with their daughters and reads and goes to see Love, Simon and shit like that and thinks that's the cutest fucking thing on planet Earth. That's his fucking base.
Nope. And even though, obviously not your cup of tea, not my cup of tea, but that's just, those are people, and they do have their preference, and he is, and maybe the most important thing is in politics is determining, are you a true believer, or are you just trying to signal that you look the right way or you seem the right way? Because any time a politician is like that and they're trying to play a part for you, I feel like you should just discard them. Yeah, it's such a dangerous thing for a politician to be willing to do. If a politician is pissing you off and frustrating you, that's probably a good sign. Yeah. Unless it's for stupidity.
Yeah, so that's why I think Bernie Sanders was so popular. Because Bernie Sanders is like the guy doesn't fucking comb his hair. He's like, we need a Medicare for all system. That's what we're gonna do. We need to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And he was so popular.
Dude, that's a good impression, bro. That's a good impression.
I can't do Trump. Trump is one of those impressions that it seems easy, but it's near impossible.
The only part of it no one can replicate is the voice. That's the only one.
Yeah,
because it's almost impossible.
It's nearly impossible to do a good Trump impression. Even Anthony.
You gotta start doing this.
Yeah.
And people know what you're trying to do.
Yeah, like Alec Baldwin is fucking horrible at playing Trump.
He looked the part. He looked like right before he opened his big fucking mouth. It was great.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, once it became. I want to bring it full circle real quick. You talked about the Young Turks. I actually liked them for a good chunk of time until the idiot Trump era came along.
Yeah.
Or moron Trump or whatever that was back in the day.
I think
because I felt like there was a shift from substance to shit talk that came with that particular long-standing program.
Yeah, I left the for one, I just wanted to tell you, I'm blocked by Anna Kasparian on Twitter. So
good job.
So I was on the TYT train basically until the Jimmy Dore stuff. And it was funny because my mind has kind of changed. Like obviously Jimmy Dore shouldn't have said what he said, but the way Anna.
What did he say? What was the point of contention? I'm not familiar with that split.
So basically what happened is Jimmy Dore is Anna was wearing basically she was wearing very revealing clothes, and it was almost like plumber butt. And Jimmy went over and looked over and said, "Nice ass." And that I think is kind of creepy, and I think feminists and Anna has a good point that is kind of creepy. But my problem is kind of the way Anna used it. So there was the way kind of this whole thing started is there was a journalist by the name of Aaron Mate. And Aaron Mate was very criticized about the way we treated, the way the media has treated Syria. And Anna Kasparian was calling him misinformation and everything. And Jimmy Dore did a segment criticizing the Young Turks. And Jimmy Dore also worked for the Young Turks. That's something. And right after that, if you watch it, Jimmy Dore was sent a message, a DM on Twitter, saying since you said this, I'm going to reveal that years ago you said nice ass to me at work. So it's one thing if you're going to make a genuine allegation against somebody, and maybe what he said was creepy, but the way you couch that, the way I feel like people completely just look completely at that allegation and just don't see the context behind everything else. I've
listened to Jimmy Dore a lot and gotten to know his sense of humor a little bit and how he acts. And there's an older generation thing where. And it's not. I don't mean this in the patriarchal sense. It's with women too. The generation of women who went from being Christian Puritans, Christian Puritans, to sexually liberated women, have more of a comfort and more of an ease with accepting sexual comments, and more of an ease with their sexuality. I think the generation after that. It became so it's a confusing thing. I think Anna was right to say, I don't think that's appropriate. After it's been said, say, I don't think that's appropriate. I didn't like that. Please don't do that again. That's the adult reaction. The childish little girlish reaction is, he said a mean thing and it really upset me, and that makes him a baddie. That's how she reacted. And I'm only saying this because I've listened to so much of Jimmy Dore and seen similar sexual type of jokes come up on a show and with his team that's there, that him saying nice ass, even if it was just because her ass looked nice that day, he's a comedian. Who gives a shit? Have some thick skin. If a dude told me nice ass on a random day. I'm not going to go bitching and complaining about it. Like
bitching and crying. I'm not, but.
Or woman or whatever. Like now if she was like, come to my office and give me some special time or you're fired, exactly. Then we have a different issue. That's a different domain entirely. Exactly.
Also, the other thing that people don't talk about is Dor wasn't above Kasparian at all. And I'd probably.
Yeah, he had no. She's like the number 2 at that network.
Number 2 at the.
So only Jank is above her.
Only Jank is above her. And in order for sexual harassment, and this is going to sound like this is going to sound so patriarchal.
Well, for the power dynamic.
For the power dynamic, like if you look at like a big part of sexual harassment, you look at Harvey Weinstein or something like that. Like it's like oh, he's abusing his power as like the king of Hollywood to do whatever he wants sexually with these young actresses. Louis C.K., even like when some people like started like excusing his behavior, they're like, okay, like that might be the reason it's inappropriate is because of his power dynamic. But power dynamic is really important when you're talking about sexual harassment. But because if you're looking at like, unless you're like a fifth wave feminist and you're like, oh, women just by the virtue of having a vagina are lower than men. I mean, I'm lower than Beyonce. Both of us are much lower than Beyonce. If Beyonce just said to us like, nice dick, like that's just like that's not.
Now there is the physical element with men being able to be predators in a way women physically can't in most cases. So there is something to be said there, but so you touched on a few different things there. I think no, I sort of lost where I was going with that. So well, but anyways, with Anna Kasparian and this Jimmy Dore situation, you know, I saw Anna Kasparian like basically call Dave Rubin lazy. Like that was like there was a little spat where like there was some articles about drama between Dave Rubin and the Young Turks, and it was like the gist of it was just they called him lazy, and
I can explain.
It felt like reputational destruction.
Yeah, I'm going to defend Anna on this. And you can watch Anna because this is actually a segment where Anna Kasparian is right. And again, as somebody who's blocked by Anna, I have no vested interest in saying Anna was right. But Anna basically said what she was saying is, do you know the full story or just like he just called her lazy? She just called him lazy.
So I went and watched the segment, and so I know she was talking about specific things where he didn't necessarily, where she felt he didn't, I think it was that he didn't show up on time, he didn't do his particular part on certain projects, he would complain, and so so those were sort of that was just the bulk of what I saw. Yeah.
You got the gist, but a lot of the reasons why he was criticized by Anna is that he would do these like 30-minute a week shows, and he was mad that he wasn't getting paid as much as like the big dogs on TYT. So he found kind of a lane, and I actually do think that the argument about Rubin being a grifter has some merit, because being a right-wing minority is actually very I'm not, just so you know, I am not saying all right-wing minorities are this. I'm just saying that it's very easy. It's like there's a very good path for you to be a very wealthy right-wing minority, a lot easier than it is to be a wealthy left-wing minority. Because if you're because of the
scarcity of the value there, like you're one of the few on the right that are not a white guy.
Yeah. So he was a right wing. He became a right wing gay guy. So like, and there's very few of that. So there's less competition. So like, the right to make themselves not look homophobic, they're like, oh yeah, we have Dave Rubin. And Dave Rubin, very like, he started out and he was like originally on like the intellectual dark web, and that was his big thing, and he was kind of libertarian. And then like now he's like pure right wing. Like he's just like a pure right winger now. Like, and I there's something about me where like I can't trust where
his actual political views haven't changed a whole lot.
No, they
in the
have.
time I've been watching him. Like his political association has, but his political views have not changed a whole lot. I just want to point something out, and I think you would appreciate me trying to point this out. Whenever you're talking about the intent of another human being, I believe that there's usually two explanations. Basically, are they oriented towards a good faith, like effort, or are they trying to be tricky? Those are like the two directions that their intent can go. So you could say the right wing is trying to make itself look less homophobic by having Dave Rubin on, or you could say that the right wing is less homophobic because they're letting Dave Rubin on, and because he was welcomed without policy changes on the right.
Yeah.
And so you got to be careful to not assume the intent, or at least to understand that it could go either way. Like I think there's truth in what you're saying. I just think it applies to a limited portion of the right.
Yeah. I do think Dave Rubin's a grifter, but I don't like using, and Kyle even says this, I don't use the word grifter very often because I think it's just not fucking true. Like, I think Jimmy
It's a buzzword. People like to use it a lot.
Use it. Like, I think Jimmy Dores, for instance, I think his intentions are pure. Glenn Greenwald.
I absolutely agree.
Glenn Greenwald, for instance, his intentions are very pure. Like, Glenn Greenwald, when people call him a grifter, people don't understand that the man lives in Brazil.
That's insane. The dude literally, no, he's from The Intercept, right? He started The Intercept? That's what I'm thinking about, right? Okay, so I just want to explain to my audience real quick. This man built a news institution to try to do better, and his own news institution got a corporate takeover, and he quit his own news institution to go do independent work because he cares about doing the right thing to that degree. That is impressive. So anyways, continue.
And not only that, like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, he just became right-wing because he's on Tucker and stuff like that. Like, for one, I think like
he got the Fox News shit stain on him.
He got the Fox News shit stain on him, and like for one, like I think Glenn explains this very well in his Kyle Crystal and Friends segment, and also I think you're not a grifter if you live in Brazil and you're criticizing their dictator. He's criticized. I don't want to even say he's a dictator, but he's criticized. I forgot his name, but like he's consistently criticizing his dictator. You don't like, that's not something that's like popular, but like in any way, like I keep forgetting the dictator, the guy's name, but he wrote a book criticizing him. He actually went to court. He went to court because of his criticisms of him. And that's somebody who I view as like, you can't fucking call this man a grifter if that's what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Are you saying, so Glenn Greenwald lives in Brazil?
Yeah, he lives in Brazil.
And actually, okay, I thought you were laying out a hypothetical. I didn't connect the dots there.
Brazil, and he criticized.
And so he critiqued the dictator, the president. I think he's officially called the president, but yeah,
he's
the dictator there.
Yeah, he's called the president, but he's criticized the president he actually wrote a book, and he has to have bodyguards on multiple occasions because he's being threatened by the Brazilian government all the time. And
so,
I'm like, that
guy's name is Aladdin.
No, I don't think that's. I don't think that's that. No, that's.
No.
No.
That's not the Brazilian guy. Okay.
Aladdin is the fake dictator in The Dictator by Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh, okay. Damn it! That my brother just commented that to I guess be funny, and I took it literally.
Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, it's not the. But yeah, I keep forgetting the dictator's name. But he's and then there was originally like a progressive guy. His name was Lula, and he actually went to prison. And Glenn Greenwald helped free him. So this man isn't a grifter. Like if you're looking at the important work that he's doing, an important work that conservative people, even progressive people, Cenk Uygur is not fucking doing this. Cenk Uygur works in a fucking air-conditioned studio. Yet he's calling this motherfucker. I shouldn't call him a motherfucker, but he's calling this dude a grifter when he's doing much harder work than Cenk Uygur is just yelling in his fucking studio.
Yeah, that's kind of insane to hear that from Cenk Uygur. He really, I mean, honestly, Cenk Uygur kind of like I don't mean like he worked hard, but he's a fat cat sitting happy.
Yeah, exactly.
He's done very, very well for himself. He has very, very wealthy investors that made sure he had a cozy run of it from the beginning.
Jeffrey Katzenberg, the CEO of DreamWorks, gave him $20 million. He's fat and happy. And you look at like TYT, and you look at like if you're a fan of TYT, like I was back in the day, to see their downhill, like TYT, and I hate to be like say this, but like literally all of their like they've gotten just like to be like quote unquote diverse. They've gotten some really, really retarded people on there. Like they have this one guy, his one name is Jason, and he literally said like, I don't think Joe Rogan should be able to endorse Bernie because he said, I have concerns about trans people in sports.
Fighting in MMA.
Yeah. And I'm like, there's a lot of people, I don't know my position on it, but like, there's a lot of people who have opinions on that. And you should welcome Joe Rogan's endorsement of Bernie, because that's going to bring a lot of people that are not necessarily political to vote for Bernie. You should be very happy about this. And there are actually very smart people like the late Michael Brooks, for instance, who was very happy about the Joe Rogan endorsement. Kyle Kalinske, who's been on Rogan many times, was happy about the endorsement. But like, I'm so fucking sick of this, like
that weird sabotaging from your own side purity test bullshit.
Yeah,
where it's like, this, now I'm gonna sort of flip it a little bit. Tom McDonald has gotten some of this treatment from the right because he said some things that are considered anti-politically correct, anti-far leftist in his videos. And so there's this huge, like, is he really about it? Is he really like a true believer, a true conservative, or anything like that? And he's a centrist. He's apolitical in his fundamental orientation. That's at least what Tom McDonald has said himself.
Yeah.
And so, but a bunch of people on the right were telling the other people on the right, like, he's helping the cause and like getting the narratives out there and letting people see, our worldview from a different perspective. Little things like, life on, like, bacteria on Mars is life, but a baby in the womb here isn't life. Like, that's a great way to at least just show you where conservatives are coming from.
Yeah.
Instead, at least just to acknowledge, like, and so he's really good at, and for me, I like Tom because he's breaking, like I'm trying to do, breaking the barriers between the left and the right, because I genuinely don't think, like, there are bad actors on all sides and everywhere, but I genuinely don't think most people disagree on the fundamental goals of things. It's all about how we're getting there. And if we had a conversation that was sort of like centered on that perspective, then we'd get a lot further, instead of it being, well, we really care and you really don't care, and we really have the smart people and you really don't, and we really are trying to do things and you aren't worth a shit, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think I saw so much of those games getting played that I wanted to get away from the manipulation, and so it made me sort of Like, even if I am not mentally, even if I'm not aware of something or whatever, once it comes up, once someone has pointed something out to me, I have chosen to refuse to let it go. I'm not willing to just say, fuck it, whatever, it's too complicated. It's like if someone brings up a good point, I have to like integrate it and acknowledge it and try to work with it. Just because that's the right way to go, I think.
Yeah, so I agree and disagree on your purity test thing. Like, there are people that I genuinely believe, like, there are positions that I just believe that, and these are not positions that are like, there are positions in my mind that I think are not really debatable, and I don't feel like I can have a really good conversation if you're not, like, if you don't agree with me on these things. And there's one that you can disagree with me, but you have to, like, disagree with me on some forms. Like, for instance, I don't know how I can talk to you if you thought the Iraq War was a good thing. Like, if you were like George W. Bush, where George W. Bush will still say, like, oh, I think getting out Saddam was like a really good thing, even though Iraq fucking collapsed because of that. I don't know if I can talk to you if you think marriage equality is bad. Or you've had or if you've had an interesting perspective, which you said marriage should be government should be out of marriage, which I think is an interesting thought. And then my last thing is I don't think I want to talk to you if I'm fine if you're opposed to marijuana legalization. But just give me fucking, like, facts. Like, give me data. Yeah. Like, I'm so sick of the Tommy smoked weed one time, and now he's sucking dick for crack. Please, please.
That's how it'll all be. Yeah.
Please do not vote to legalize weed. We cannot have any more little Tommies fall victim to the horrible drug of marijuana. And I'm like, if you do that, like, I'm like, for instance, like, I think I told you on Wednesday, there was like, I think there was like a town hall on weed, these dispensaries in my town. And there's this one woman that's in my town that, like, has, like, this is her main mission is to not get marijuana legalization in New York. And she failed, obviously, because marijuana legalization is coming to New York. And she wrote an article, and the article has very little to do with policy. It really had to do with anecdotes and stuff like that. And anecdotes on marijuana are, I think, really dangerous. And the thing is, like, I think that the pro-marijuana side has not done their own anecdotes. Like, there are so many adult, like, this is, I think, a really winning argument on the marijuana side, which is, if you just, like, talk about, you don't even have to do, like, the economic arguments, even though the economic arguments are great. You could just say, like, there are some people that instead of having a glass of wine after they go to work, after they come home from work, like, they just get a joint. And that's just what they do. And do you think that they shouldn't have their individual rights because some kid, like, can't control themselves with the substance? Like, I can literally name so many, like, my uncle was an alcoholic, and he eventually committed suicide because of his alcoholism. I'm not using that story to prohibit people from drinking alcohol, because I think that if you are mature enough to, if you're 21, I think the age should be 19 and over, but we can talk about that. But I think if you're of legal age and you're responsible, you don't drink and drive, you're just a responsible adult, you should be able to drink. You should be able to drink. And I think that that's just a part of that's just a part of being a responsible, that's just a part of being, like, an intellectually good person. You can't be like, since it's not good for one person, then it should be illegal for everybody.
Yeah. I think for me, I didn't have a strong sort of legality of drugs position until I started getting into politics and came at it from the various political perspectives. I was straight edge all the way up until out of high school, until I was 20 years old. So I didn't touch anything. I didn't have any. But my perspective was, especially with the weed thing specifically, that it was like the other drugs. And so I think one of the most compelling sort of facts, and it's interesting because I haven't thought about this in maybe 7 or 8 years, how to actually try to persuade someone to see my perspective on drug legalization. Like, I have my views, but that's different than trying to think about, like, what are the linchpins that sort of break it. For me, it was, to the degree that it happened to me, it was, it's not as dangerous as any of these other things. It's not as dangerous as you think. Second, it actually does a lot of good for a lot of people. Third, we evolved with the cannabinoid receptor system separate from the dopamine system. So it's not addiction in the normal sense. We've sort of co-evolved with it. It was legal for the longest time. And my sort of broader philosophy on what should and shouldn't be legal, now that I have formed one, is based off of 2 essential areas where you kind of have 2 axioms or presuppositions, just two things you sort of have to give me, and then we can get to my perspective. One is there's a roughly discernible hierarchy of crime that humans can commit against each other. Some things that we do to each other are not as bad as others, and there's things that are at the top of that, like rape and murder and things like that. We know that are just evil. And then there's all the things down to I lied to you. That is, a violation of a moral, pact between us, but it's not anything that would rise to the level of a serious crime. So there's a hierarchy of crime. That's point 1. Point 2 is that when the government reacts to what is made illegal, it does it in 2 different ways. My bad. 3 things, actually, not 2. This one you kind of have to piece out. They respond in 2 ways. And the 2 points are, 1, they're humans and we're humans, so the moral plane we're existing on is the same. So that's 1 is the hierarchy of crime. 2, we're both human. 3, when the government's reacting to a crime with action, they do it in 2 ways. 1, by fining you and stealing your money, which is theft. Even if it's collective theft against you, it's still stealing your money. It's still the same action. It's theft. And then they arrest you and put you in jail, which is kidnapping. It's taking you out of your life by force, violating your personal freedoms and choice and autonomy, and putting you somewhere, separating you from other people against your will. It's the exact same sort of behavior. So if whatever you did initially, that's the crime, is not as bad as stealing, and they steal from you, they're committing a worse crime than you did in the first place, and making the world morally a worse place by taking that action.
I completely
And then you take it up to the kidnapping level, same exact thing. If whatever you did is not as bad as physically robbing someone of their personal autonomy, the government should not do anything to cross that barrier against you with force or coercion or incentives or anything. Like the incentives is sort of about the vaccine and stuff today. I want to tie that in, but mostly it's about the force and, fines and arrest.
But I mean, like, I think that, like, that argument has been, like, stuff like that has been made by libertarians in a lot of ways. I don't think that one of the things that I've been studying, like, a while is persuading people in terms of things. And I've persuaded my parents in terms of things, especially on this issue. And I think that's definitely, and I agree with basically everything you've said. But the problem that I have is, and this is what I think about all the time, is those anecdotes that we despise, both of us, those fucking things work. They work. They work on people.
Politics is personal.
Politics is personal. And progressives, left-wingers, we don't like anecdotes. Left-wingers do not like anecdotes. We're very into statistics. Harvey Milk thought about this, and I watched Milk the other week, and a big part of that movie was one of the ways he was defeating anti-gay propositions was he was pointing out, he said, every single gay person that I know needs to come out so that everybody knows a gay person. So, and if everybody knows a gay person, then they're less likely to discriminate against them.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that really fascinating. And I think if you just do that with pot smokers, it will have the same thing. If people know there's like one dude that they know that instead of having a glass of wine has a joint. And I don't think it should just be for medical marijuana, because like you could make the argument that like, oh, like I think marijuana people often just talk too much about, like, they're like, let's legalize recreational marijuana, but let's only talk about the people it helps medically.
Mm-hmm.
Which the response to that is, let's just legalize medical marijuana, not legalize recreational. Which is, I think we're at the point with medical where it's kind of you can't really, even really right-wing politicians are for medical marijuana in some ways.
Yeah.
Like even Ron DeSantis signed a medical marijuana bill.
They have medical marijuana in Mormon-centric Utah.
Yeah, exactly. But in recreational marijuana, I think it's getting to the tipping point. I think with New York and California legalizing, I think if New York and California and the other states, and I think if a few more states, like Connecticut is legalizing it, Rhode Island is very close to legalizing it. All these.
I want to make this point real quick because it sort of speaks to your broader point here. Oh no, sorry. Keep saying what you were saying.
Yeah. So Rhode Island is about to legalize it. I mean, it got stalled. Like their bill got stalled in the Senate. But there's a lot of states. Basically, almost the entire East Coast is about to legalize it, and Arizona's fucking legalized it, which is like right next to it. New Mexico, Nevada's legalized it. All these states that aren't necessarily blue states, have legalized it, and it's proven to be popular. Like people, like there are people that have like lived in who were voted no on those propositions because the majority of times marijuana is legalized. It's legalized through direct ballot initiatives rather than through like the legislative process,
which is the people's power. That is how we fix the system. That is how we fix the system. For everyone that wants to know, that's how you do it.
Yeah, that's how you fix the system. But a lot of it's times through that. And there are people that have voted no on those propositions that have said, like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Like, youth use has gone down. Youth use has gone down. And the other thing is, like, the other thing I keep trying to talk about, and this is a big thing with marijuana, because this is an issue I'm really passionate about. Especially because the reason I'm so passionate about marijuana is, so I have epilepsy. As somebody with epilepsy, I cannot drink alcohol to a level of like normal human beings can handle it, because I could get a seizure. I can smoke pot and it's fine for me. So having pot legalization allows me to have an adult substance that is legal that I can have without having a seizure. And that's why it's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And my problem is it's like there's so many people, and they're like I think they're like, oh yeah, we need to protect the kids from marijuana, but then they're cracking over a glass of whiskey when they come home at night, and I'm like, how fucking hypocritical. Like, I get it.
And here's a real quick side note. We're not talking about kids. We're talking about adults.
We're talking about adults. It's called adult use of marijuana. Like, if you've ever been to a dispensary, which I've not, but I've had friends that have gotten weed.
I've been to many.
What?
Dispensaries. I've been to many dispensaries.
But like from what I've heard is they like you have to be in like a waiting room for like 4 minutes while they scan your ID.
Yep.
That's what I've heard.
So most of them, so the least secure one would be one where you wait. No, the least secure one would be one where you walk into the building without anyone asking for your ID. And then every single one after that has some sort of front desk area or waiting room, like you're saying, where you go, you give them your ID, and you go, you sit, you wait in line, and then they let people out in the back with a delayed effect. So there's no way a child could get in there and get through those steps. And like I said, so at a bare minimum, you have that waiting room. A bunch of other ones, like the one I go to, has a security guard at the front door on the outside saying, I need to see your ID before you even get in the building. So there's many layers of security.
So people think it's like super bad and you could just give a McLovin ID, fake ID. But it's like, the thing is, I don't think these people that are against legal marijuana have actually studied the issue very much. And I don't think that I think they're going off of, the other thing that I think is very important to this discussion is the difference between legal weed, like regulated marijuana, and illicit weed.
Black market
weed. Because like they'll give these anecdotes, and what the
I actually have someone in my my extended friends of family whose daughter and son got fentanyl laced weed, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was fentanyl, but they got weed laced with something, or they got something laced with something, and no one wanted to say that it wasn't weed. Yeah. But anyways, they did get laced stuff because it was black market, and they died. They died. Two teenage, or one teenage girl, and then the other guy was in the hospital for a while, I think.
Yeah. But what would happen is that those stories would be used against legal weed, when they don't fucking know that legal weed would actually fucking stop that problem.
Yeah.
Because people
it's only because it's go ahead.
Because people don't understand. And even if like there is a argument on the right wing side about how in California, because the taxes are so high, there is a black market still.
And there was a black market before, so it's just going to take time to transition anyways. But the taxes.
And also, the argument is just lower the taxes. And also, the argument is the weed that is, because the black market, what the black market is going to be selling is, it's going to be selling the weed that comes from the dispensaries. And it's not going to be selling the illicit fucking fentanyl weed. Which, in my mind, even if there's a black market, that's a win. Like, even if there is a black market, which you can get rid of, because, like, the weed companies have actually been, like, really, like, lobbying the government to, like... And the weed companies, like, if you look at what the weed, the so-called, as Laura Ingraham likes to say, big weed, what big weed has done... Big weed is
weed's been around for like 4 minutes, and they're like, big weed.
Yeah, and like
meanwhile, we're like, but big oil, that's a facade. That's
big oil is a facade, or big tobacco. And like, if you look at like what, they never talk about big alcohol.
Yeah, I
don't even think that there's like a name for it. But if you look at what big weed's done in difference between like big alcohol or big tobacco. Like, big tobacco literally sells fucking cigarettes to children. Like, advertises vaping to kids. Like, you remember 2018 when, like, every single kid at a fucking Juul, like, had a
I have 3 younger brothers who, and one of them was into vaping, still is into vaping. I like vaping, too, here and there. So, yeah, I totally saw that. I actually I was sort of at that trend from the beginning, all the way up when it was just the little flavored, like 50 puff nicotine pens that were like $5 or something at a gas station, all the way to the Juuls 4 or 5 years later.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that they're doing that. Big weed wouldn't even fucking dare to do that. Like, weed dispensaries are more than fucking responsible. They're very responsible businesses. And
we got about 20 seconds before the 1 hour limit, and then we'll have to just hop right back on.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so the dispensaries, yeah, so they're very responsible, and yeah, so let's hop back on.
Cool. 3, 2.